You are now listening to the Meat Pies podcast, your podcast for most things footy, few things pie. This is Gabe. I'm joined by the whole gang. We got Nico, we got Laweek, we got Paul, we got Forrest, or as I actually just found out, we got Pookie on my left. In a rare Meat Pies podcasting occurrence, we actually have a few of us in the same room. The boys, Vegas lived up to the hype, and we're live, we're hydrated, but
Rehydrate.
how are we feeling? Especially you, Nico. Nico just road trip back to LA after big Vegas weekend.
I'm feeling great. I'm feeling a lot better than I did yesterday. That's for sure.
I'm riding off the high of watching you guys have fun.
Yeah, the weekend.
How was that weekend to you?
Oh, weekend was fantastic. Thanks for asking, Nico.
Well, Laweek, we're super stoked that you had a good weekend back in Seattle because we had an outrageous weekend in Las Vegas, in the city that Forrest built. Yeah, this rundown is going one place and one place only, and that is straight to Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, Nevada, where the U.S. men's national team faced off against Mexico in the Gold Cup final. We planned a couple months ago to attend this match, praying for a U.S.-Mexico final, and our prayers were answered when the U.S. dispatched of Asian Giants Qatar in the semifinal, and Mexico squeezed by Canada and our good friend Alistair Johnson in their semifinal. And suddenly the stage was set. The boys convene in the land of few trees, but one very large forest. And rolled up to a stadium that was flooded with green and red and white flags and beautiful black and pink Rosa Mexicano Adidas kits. Energy around the stadium was absolutely electric, and suddenly we were off on a 120-minute CONCACAF journey. The only thing more abundantly obvious than the Mexican supporter domination in the early stages was the Mexican footballing domination on the pitch. In the early parts of the match, they played in, through, and around the U.S. men's national team in what appeared to be a varsity versus JV grudge match. Matt Turner was stretched early, but the best chance was actually Paul Arriola when he was slipped in by Sebastian Leggett after a sloppy turnover from Mexico at the back. Arriola had space and time, and in typical CONCACAF fashion, he found the post with his shot. All of the play continued to be run by Mexico down the flanks, but thankfully for the U.S., Mexico's clinicality in front of goal was non-existent. Mexico's Orbelin Pineda did his best Giassi Zardes impersonation and wasted two prime chances at the start of the second half. And then Giassi Zardes did his best Giassi Zardes impersonation and slid a one-on-one with the Mexican keeper well wide and fluffed another header opportunity set up by an Acosta set piece. The match became increasingly scrappy. Extra time was becoming more imminent. Then the extra time periods were tired and messy, and a late yellow card from Edson Alvarez, who had barely put a foot wrong all night, gave US a set piece opportunity from a spot where Kellen had already clearly shown his capabilities. Acosta delivered a perfectly teasing in-swinger, and in the 117th minute, we had our breakthrough. Miles Robinson slam dunked the ball into the ground with his head. The net bulged, the stadium erupted, and just a few short minutes later, the U.S. men's B team were champions of the world, or at least the part of the world that isn't very good at soccer. It was a thrilling match, ups and downs, and even a few fists flying in the crowd at the end. But before we talk about the footy, let's talk about that stadium, the electricity, that atmosphere. That was pretty dang special. Was it not? I know Laweek, you unfortunately couldn't make the trip, but the three of us here at Forrest's mom's house and Nico were all in Vegas. I mean, that was pretty sweet, boys, wasn't it?
Entirely. It was all of our first times there, first game
event with fans.
Yeah, first sporting event with fans at Allegiant Stadium. And Gabe mentioned briefly how many Mexican fans were there. Like in the first half, like we were rooting for Mexico because they were going bananas in the
For our own
entire
safety.
stadium. It was crazy. That was by far the most insane stadium I've been in for like pretty much any event. I know Nico was absolutely head over heels with his experience.
Yes. Yeah. As a loyal fan to the Las Vegas Raiders now, I was super thrilled to see Allegiant. Quite the beautiful stadium. I had hoped they would get there in their new home, but I don't know if you guys really noticed this, but the pitch was pretty narrow in itself. There was only about a yard or two of space on either sides of the sideline. I know a bunch of the supporters were pretty upset with that. Seemed like the players didn't really have a whole lot of space, and it was maybe a little bit unsafe. But yeah, the stadium was just something else. So that was really fun in itself.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on the pitch. It was kind of strange how tight it was, but I also thought that we benefited from it because the stadium's built really stacked. So we felt really, really close to the action, like really close to the players. And it was all around phenomenal, beautiful stadium, beautiful view of the strip. It was pretty brutally hot outside waiting to get in. And like you guys touched on, it had to be at least 80-20 in favor of Mexican fans. So it was electric. We loved it. Thankfully, all of us were safe after the game. Others were not so lucky, as Paul and Gabe witnessed. But yeah, it was unforgettable. We'll
we can
remember it forever.
We can give a rundown of the several brawls we saw towards the end of the episode.
Yeah, I was about to ask what's the safety concern that I'm hearing about?
Well, honestly, like for me, I was almost happy it was like 80-20 Mexican fans. At first, I wasn't thrilled, but they are such awesome like footballing fans. Like it was such like a familial atmosphere in there, but like almost like a party, like a family party atmosphere. Like people were definitely, had a good time before the match. They had plenty of time too. It was a 5 p.m. kickoff. But it wasn't really that hostile, and the Mexican kits are really beautiful. Mexican flags and like the dress and just the way they cheer for their team is really beautiful and awesome. So I was pretty stoked on that. But yeah, we saw a video on Twitter earlier. It was captioned first brawl.
Allegiant Stadium.
The first official brawl in Allegiant Stadium. I think by the end of the game, beer was very accessible. Like the lines for getting drinks were not bad at all. Whereas like actually getting your seats was kind of a pain. There weren't maybe enough like ticketing attendance or like section attendance. But yeah, I think I know it's not right to like blame alcohol for people's like poor behavior. But yeah, I think by the end, especially the way the match went, people were a little more riled up. And also getting out of that stadium, it's been well documented, is also a nightmare. Yeah, so that probably did not help things.
Yeah, the video we saw on Twitter happened inside the stadium. Shortly outside of the stadium, Paul and I witnessed something in similar fashion, and had to get out of there pretty quickly. So we didn't get wrapped into it. But
You're telling me you didn't just jump in like fully ready to throw hands,
this
Nico?
guy jumped in with like a flying right hand.
I'll
This
give
guy,
a
the
quick
guy he
rundown.
hit just like disappeared into the bushes.
Yeah.
And I was on the phone with Forrest and I was like, yo, Forrest, I have to pause our conversation really quick. Also, right as the game ended, we looked, me, Nico, Gabe's brother, Ben, shout out Ben Adler. We were all in the same section for the game. And right when the game actually, we looked like right where we were sitting and saw another person just take an overhand right and like go down. So there
this-
was a lot of violence, not a lot of violence. There's some conflict. There were some skirmishes after the game. There were a lot of skirmishes during the game as well. It was pretty chippy, but the ref, I think, did overall a pretty good job controlling it. Only gave out like 2, maybe 3 yellow cards. Maybe should have given out a red card for a heinous from Herrera.
On who was that on? That was on Eric Williamson. Yeah, I was gonna say Erickson. I was like, I don't think that's the right country.
Whoever it was, he's lucky to be with us. That
Yes.
was crazy.
Bro,
the
he
game-
should have sustained like a couple concussions that game.
yeah. The game itself was like really, really good. There was a huge momentum shift around halftime where the game got a lot more interesting. Not as many chances in the second half, but the game was way more back and forth. I'm kind of surprised Mexico didn't capitalize on a lot of their chances. I think if they had Raul in that team, they probably would have been a lot more likely to score 1 or 2 of those chances. Funes Mori wasn't bad. He had a couple on target that you can't really blame him for. Like keeper made good saves, but you just think if they had a quality 9 in there, it might have gone a little different because they were just torching down the wings, putting balls in. The center backs of the US were pretty suspect with getting the ball out as well. So that led to a lot of easy chances for them.
At least in the first half. I think in the second half, they definitely made that correction. One thing I will say, I loved watching, I didn't know that his nickname was Tecatito, but Jesus Corona, he's a tank. And like, I forgot he's one of Porto's best players, like a Champions League squad that's consistently making runs. It didn't seem like it was an interesting decision from Craig Berhalter to start George Bello, who is like a really young left back who didn't play any of the tournament against a top class winger. And I won't say that Bello did a bad job, but Tecatito put up a difficult time for him, for sure.
I think Tecatito was the most common jersey I saw at the stadium. He seems to be well beloved by the Mexican fans.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was that?
I mean, I feel like we got kind of worked down both flanks. Especially like we talked about how narrow the pitch was. It's almost even more impressive what Mexico was able to do on both sides out wide. And something I was talking with Paul about earlier, which I guess maybe we can get into a little bit about like, if we were more impressed with like the US pulling out a win, or if we were more like surprised that Mexico, took the loss. But I think Berhalter, as he should, is getting a lot of credit for like winning 2 tournaments this summer. But tactically, that match, like, I don't think people can really say that the US like won the game at all. There were just so many occasions too, and this is very specifically about like the play down the flanks, but there were so many occasions where like Hoppy was the one getting torched down the side, like in our final third, like not even up by like half field, like down like by the touch line. And then even if we won the ball back, like you mentioned, Loic, we weren't playing quite as dangerously out of the back in the second half, but that's because we were honestly mostly playing kickball in the second half. But like Matthew Hoppy's sitting so deep, like we're sitting deep on the other side with Areola too. So a lot of my memories of the second half are just like Matt Turner booting the ball to Giassi Zardes and him like somehow managing to get like a piece of his body onto the ball, and then like Mexico kind of just taking possession and playing from there. A lot of like sort of Everton like nightmare recurring dream type of stuff.
Well,
Super nostalgic.
Well, I was gonna say, like, I think going into this match, I think everyone kind of knew it was gonna be messy. Knew it was gonna be scrappy. US Mexico is always scrappy. There's never really like beautiful football being played in those games. I think in the first half where, and I also second half, but where the US was finding the most success was they're honestly playing a bit of Mourinho ball where they did not want to keep it. Like
Right.
they, the times where they were playing out of the back, that's when they gave it up. Even when they had possession in the midfield, it was sus. It was the high press that gave Areola that one chance. It was a lot of the intense high press.
For sure.
Without it, and that's really tough because you have to capitalize on those 2 or 3 chances you get, which is difficult when you don't have your most clinical players with you. But I appreciated our front line a lot because as much as they may have not been as clinical as they should have been, they're the type of players who work their asses off. Like
Yeah.
I've never seen a player with the work rate of Matthew Hoppe. Like he,
Dude,
Or
they were
Giassi.
all
I
grinding.
mean, they run like
so much.
Here's-
hard.
Here's what I'll say about just like the general like style of that game. I think this game and this win for the US team means relatively little for the future, as even though American fans might not want to hear that. I think the Nations League final means a lot more.
Agreed.
And you talk about the US playing this pretty ugly style of football or of soccer in this final, but we're playing with our C team here, or our BC team. So I don't think it's really fair to judge the squad and the
Not at all.
of the players that were fielded here. So yeah, I mean, that being said, I do think this means relatively little, except for the fact that we know this team is gritty. We know this team has heart. And we know this team knows how to grind out a win here. But that's kind of been the brand of American soccer for quite a while now. It's just nice to see that we were actually able to stick out the result. And it's kind of been the theme of the whole tournament. Every single game was a 1-0 win for this team, besides the Martinique 6-1. But yeah,
Could have been. Hey, that could have been 1-0. I mean, Martinique, they're grinding it out too.
Yeah.
It could have gone either way.
And I think in terms of like looking at the future of this team, you got to compare what we see on the pitch from them here. You got to compare it to the level of play we see at the Euros, because that's kind of the golden standard for what the competition is going to be at the World Cup. And in this particular final, it's miles ahead. The European play is miles ahead of this scrappy CONCACAF final. But yeah, I'm a little bit concerned that our first team members aren't going to get like the proper competition in I guess like friendlies and qualifiers leading up to the World Cup before we have to put together a really solid performance against a Belgium, France, Portugal, any of those European powerhouses. So that's what I'm really looking to see in the next like year and a half or so before the World Cup is, when are we going to see our best 11 go up against a strong side and put together a good performance?
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It should be concerning, but I was kind of thinking in a more optimistic way that this is kind of a big win for like the culture and the belief of the squad. Like I think it's super impressive that Berhalter, got all these super young players who aren't very experienced, this organized, and, just really seem to get a lot out of their talent. And I think kind of back to Loic's comment, I think it is, he did play a lot of Mourinho ball. It was total nostalgic flashbacks to this year too, where we would just be sitting way back and I figured we would just dink in some lame goal on a counterattack or something and win 1-0. And that's more or less how we got there. But I felt like Berhalter had to play that style just because we didn't have the clinical finishers that we would with the A team. These guys are young, but they are, athletic, in great shape, have a lot of good energy that they bring to the pitch. So I came away overall very impressed and just generally optimistic for the mentality that we're going to carry forward. Like, this is a huge momentum win for us, over 2/3, 3/4 of Mexico's A team, who kind of dominated out of the gate. So yeah, I'm generally excited. I do understand the cautiousness that we have to have, though.
I'll say too, like if we are comparing it to the Euros, like some of the interplay and skill shown, especially in the first half by Mexico, was world class. Was like there's no other way to define it. I mean, we were getting Olayed in like the 8th minute. I mean, and like there were nutmegs flying. There was, link up play in the middle of the pitch that was really high quality. And I mean, they have world class players that were on the field. So
Yeah, Hector Herrera, like that guy is literally pulling strings for Atletico. So
and I mean, and I think also one last guy that we all kind of wanted to highlight who like stood out, especially in person, was Edson Alvarez. Like he is so big, honestly, in person too. And he kind of like takes that presence onto the ball. I think Paul was kind of pointing that out to me during the match. Like he's just so calm and composed on the ball. He was never rushed, and he really, especially in the second half and into extra time for them, he kind of like sat deeper and deeper and would really connect things between their back line and their midfield when like their back line, also showed that they were struggling to play it out. And he was kind of huge for them and not making those mistakes late in the game until obviously, he gave up the free kick that won us the game. Yeah.
He's really got that. Oh, I was gonna say he's really got that field general vibe, just that nothing's getting past him, and just sky high confidence. I think I was trying to find like a good player to compare him to, whether that's like a Rodri or a Busquets, but I think what makes the most sense to me is Marquinhos when he plays defensive mid, because Alvarez was really almost playing as a third center back there, but still just like so clinical on the ball and never he had maybe one missed touch the entire game from what I can remember.
So good. He was like by far the standout player in my mind. One of Mexico's like their left back or their right back, this bald guy. I don't remember his name, but he was really good. But Edson Alvarez was like so incredibly calm, practically made his pass percentage was like above 90. Every time he got the ball, you just felt like the entire game slow and then speed up right as he wanted it to. It was incredible. Even the foul at the end, we only say that's a mistake because it led to the goal. You could argue that wasn't even a mistake. He did kind of get bossed on the header, though, that actually won the game. So yeah, that was pretty tough for him. But like, in my opinion, he was their best player by far. Youngster for Ajax. We saw he's worth like 20 mil or something, but it was so fun to watch him play in person because you did get like a real European sense of his talent. It was amazing.
Yeah, that's sweet. I think if we're chatting, or I mean, Gabe, if you have something else to say about Edson Alvarez, hop on that.
I was actually to move us on to do a little new segment.
I'll do a quick little final piece, quick little standout player for me. Quick shout out, my boy Kellen Acosta. He's always holding it down for them. I mean, he starts even alongside Wes and the European players, but I think he deserves just as much praise as any other player on this team. His defensive ground he's able to cover, the way he stands players up, and his distribution is just really solid. So I hope to see him make a move to Europe in the next couple of years. He is, I think, 26, but I could see him doing that.
And we can't talk about this game without talking about Matt Turner. I mean, come on, that was just an absurd performance, getting keeper of the tournament. I think maybe the player of the tournament for the U.S. team, and I think he really vaulted himself into conversation for being that number one moving forward. So I'll be really interested to see what direction Berhalter goes and for goalkeeper there.
For sure. Well, there's one final player we have to shout out in this part of our new segment. This is the first installment in the Meat Pies Academy. So every few weeks, we're going to quickly shout out a young American player making big moves in the world of footy. And with our first addition to the Meat Pies Academy squad, we want to offer a spot to Gianluca Busio.
Oh, awful.
19-year-old midfielder from Sporting KC who appears well on his way to Venice, Italy, where he hopes to have a successful campaign with Venezia FC, the sexy kidded side that hope to have a successful campaign themselves after being promoted to Serie A. With a name like Gianluca Busio, the big-haired, big personality midfielder is primed to make big moves in Italy, slicing through the canals of Venice. Congrats on the Gold Cup final win and on the big move to Gianluca. Pinchy fingers in the chat.
Why do you go like this, Gabe? What was this?
He was Busio was definitely the standout player to me in the first half of the tournament, just as far as like players that weren't as much on my radar for this US team. Watching him is a joy. He really finds his way to get his foot on everything. And yeah, I'm super excited to see him compete at top level European games.
For sure. So really quickly, we're going to move on to transfer window updates from each of our Prem clubs, or just in general. This can be a very quick update. I mean, I could talk about Everton's transfers for days, but I know we don't have time to talk about all the incredible prospects that we're linked to. I'll start.
Tell us the big name signings you guys have made.
I'll start with Everton. We can just even do like updates since the last podcast, because if we kind of rehashed everything that's happened in the window, it might take a while. But in the past week, all my beliefs have been confirmed. Andres Townsend gives a great interview. Top guy. top guy.
Lad has a podcast himself.
Yeah.
Great
And that I'll let you guys talk the rest of the time.
I can go next. Since last pod, we haven't made a ton of moves. We signed last time we recorded, we signed Varane that day. So he actually, I think, reports to camp tomorrow, which is pretty exciting. I think Sancho might be doing the same. Not sure what the Pogba situation is. As much as I love the guy, I've talked about this before. Like, I'd be happy to sell him for some cash if it means we get Camavinga, maybe Donny gets a little more playing time. Because I think he's worked really, really hard this offseason. There's been some pictures going around and he's like kind of shredded, which is good to see. Yeah. Hopefully we get some Goretzka vibes out of Donny this next year. But yeah, no big moves. Hopefully we can string it together before the first game though. Rashford confirmed gonna be out for a little bit because he's having shoulder surgery. Yeah. So that's the biggest one. But we also got bald Martial storming down the wing, putting the league on watch. Nico, sorry, Louis, you might get a little feedback from that on some Henry comparisons, but we'll see how it goes.
Okay.
What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on I'm forgetting who was that said this quote about Manchester United, but he's whoever it was, it may have been Sir Alex, who said this club is so big, no single player can ever pretend or can ever think that they are bigger than Manchester United. Do you think that's kind of like relevant in this Pogba situation, or do you think it can be chalked up to other things? If they decide to not sell him, it's kind of a roll of the dice here, considering he has 1 year left of his contract. I personally believe it would be smart to get Camavinga because in January, anyone can negotiate with him. So they could be cheap too.
I think Pogba kind of gets a bad rap for like thinking he's better than the club. And like,
I don't know why people think that.
Yeah, a lot
He's
of
a pretty
people
humble
do.
dude.
He's really, really flashy and kind of controversial in like how he plays, I think. So I think that gives a lot of people a bad impression. I think they want someone a little more consistent, a little more solid. I think at the end of the window, he's gonna stay because I think Ole like needs silverware now, and that's his approach for this year. Is like we're getting our guys, and we're like hopefully, knock on wood, getting a trophy this year. And I think for that reason, he's gonna keep Pogba. I don't think it's the smart move, but I also won't complain about seeing him play in the Prem another year because he's a joy.
Absolutely.
Who's
Nico?
next? Yeah, Nico, go.
Spurs are quite the busy side in this
What?
window. Obviously, the big news with Kane not showing up to training the first 2 days. He's eligible to return. I've done a little bit of digging. Some people were saying that, oh, it's just because he had to quarantine for 5 days
The
upon his
Bahamas.
return. But I think the logical way to look about this is Kane always knew he was going to have to quarantine upon coming back to the UK, and he still chose to come back late. So yes, it's a very short holdout NFL style, but he'll be back next week unless there are significant progressions before then. But it seems like as soon as Kane comes back, he's going to sit down with Levy and Paratici and Nuno and probably tell them he wants to go. And I think, those three, the Spurs brass, have been saying like Harry Kane's going to be a Tottenham player next year. And they've been really consistent with that all summer long. But, we'll see if they do honor this gentleman's agreement. I say in quotations because who really knows what that means. But as a Spurs fan, I will say, if you really love him, set him free, let him go. As much as I love the guy and don't want him to leave, I feel like at the same time, we don't want players at the club who don't want to be there. So it's a really interesting and difficult situation. I think we'll have a little bit more clarity next week. That being said, the deal that was announced today, Christian Romero from Atalanta, could not be more thrilled with that one. He's exactly the kind of player we need, a young but already successful center back who's showing a lot of promise, and hopefully can help right the ship in our porous defensive back line.
Definitely. Cristiano Romero, I think it was 50 mil, Nico.
It was 43 million pounds plus 5 in add-ons to be added next year, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's solid. And I'm really excited about that, just to distract us from the Kane saga. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, the Kane stuff's so weird to me because, I mean, it sounds like City's also pretty close on snagging Jackie Boy. And that's like 250 million euros if they get both of them. And then what do they do with their current players? Because I've heard literally nothing about sending other players from their squad elsewhere. So
they're not getting both. There's no way that they can afford both. It's one or the other. On the Grealish situation, I listened to Fabrizio Romano talk about it today. He said City have tabled a $100 million bid. Sorry, 100 million pound bid for both Kane and Grealish. Grealish has been offered a new contract from Aston Villa, and they are supposed to talk about it this week, Villa and Grealish. And it seems like City are going to kind of wait on that one until they get a final word on Kane. And if it seems like Levy simply wants too much and they're not willing to shell out 120 or 140 million, whatever their asking price is, then it seems likely to me that Grealish will be a City player. Because I think Villa would accept 100 for Grealish. Am I wrong?
Yeah.
And Kane will be a Chelsea player?
Hopefully not.
Um,
No way in hell.
Lukaku.
They put in a new bid today for
120,
120,
Yeah.
and it would be like 12 million a year in
It's
wages.
so funny if Inter sell him, because like they're like, he's so untouchable. Just
Yeah.
add like 15, 20 mil, and they're like, here you
Okay.
go.
Yeah.
I'm really shocked about no real Holland news this summer. That's been a big shock.
I don't think
to me.
Holland is leaving.
I don't
He's
either.
not leaving.
I've heard the update for the Lukaku situation is Inter was previously interested in Marcus Alonso earlier in the summer. And so Chelsea submitted a bid of Alonso plus 100 million for Lukaku, which Inter have rejected. And from what it seems, if there can be some kind of club agreement, then Lukaku would go to Chelsea, even though they've sold him twice.
Well,
Which is a little puzzling.
that's
Go
well,
ahead,
that's an interesting segue to some interesting Arsenal news because they, I mean, Inter's like in desperate need of cash and they don't want to sell Rom, and they are talking about there's a lot of talk right now about selling Lautaro to Arsenal.
Oh,
Yeah, and because he does want
about that too.
yeah, he's apparently wants Prem experience. He's open to coming to the club, and I think we'd definitely be willing to pay for him and do a little swap / cash add on with Bellerin, because I need to get rid of that guy. But
and they need it right back.
and they need a right back. So that and there's not really any other Prem club right now that's been talking to Lautaro. I would love to see him join us. Just offload Nketiah, offload Laka. And there's also, I think Arsenal is thinking about Tammy. I think Chelsea dropped their asking price for him from 40 down to like 30 or 35, which is interesting. And then there's other news of trying to make a big money move for James Maddison plus some of our players. Because I think the interesting thing about Arsenal right now is like we've made 3 pretty good signings so far. I'm really happy with them. But we still have like pretty much all of our players all of our deadwood, right? Like, so I want to see Elneny go. I want to see Hector go. I want to see a couple other guys leave. So it'll be interesting. There's a lot to be done, but if we could somehow snag Lautaro and James Maddison, I'm satisfied.
That's a great
Well,
window.
I've heard that Arsenal's priority is still. This is from the Here We Go man himself.
Is
I listened
Odegaard.
to the podcast today with all the updates. Odegaard is the first choice.
Yeah.
And if Real Madrid, double down on their stance with that, then they're going to go after Maddison. I also did see that Sky Italy reported that Tottenham will be interested in Lautaro if Kane is sold. So, yeah.
Well, speaking of Elneny and Odegaard, last week on the podcast, we debated cordially who had the best backline in the Premier League up to this point in the transfer market. And, this week we're going to be talking about who has the best midfield in the Premier League. Elneny certainly stating his case. FC Elneny. So would anyone?
You think you're so funny, Gabe?
Well, would you like to make a case for?
No,
I can't make a case for Arsenal.
I can't. I can't make. I can make a case for Arsenal. I can't make a case for Elneny. But I'm still not. I'm not gonna make the case. I'm not gonna make the case for Arsenal. I'll put out my initial.
Please.
Opinion. I'm gonna still say it's City. I think their midfield's pretty hard to beat. We know what they can do. They got depth. I think they're flexible. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you could say Chelsea just because Conte is a beast, but like City just all across the board have that squad depth.
Yeah, I was gonna say my pick, as much as I would like, maybe if we got Camavinga, we would be in the running with Bruno, Pogba, and Camavinga. My pick though is definitely gonna be Chelsea, Conte, Jorginho off an amazing year. Mason Mount being like one of the more promising youngsters in the league. I would pick their midfield as best in the Prem, probably over City at this point.
That's so hard.
Nico, you're supposed to be take guy, and every single week it's hard.
going
I
City.
can't pick
I'm
one.
going City. No, I'm saying it's hard for me because I'm going City. Conte's been like top 3 favorite players in the Prem for me this year and last year. But you got to give some respect to the man himself, KDB. He's still, in my opinion, the best midfielder in the league, and the supporting cast behind him ain't so bad. So I'm giving it to City.
I'm on the Chelsea train for this season. I think last season I'll give it to City, but I think that there's a little bit of a question for me if they play 3 in the middle City, sort of who that third person is. I think that was an issue for Pep in the Champions League final, that decision. You know, I think Rodri certainly hasn't like solidified that position, and also Gundogan had an incredible year last year, but it's not like he's a level above the rest. You know, I mean, I think at the Euros, I wouldn't say he looked average, but he didn't, you know, look like he was that much better than any of the other top midfielders at the tournament. Obviously, Kevin is Kevin, but Kevin is Kevin. But Chelsea, I think I know what that looks like for them next year. Jorginho is on such a heater right now. Mount is also pretty on fire, and then like Conte, you know, so much has been said already about the effect that he can have on a midfield. So, and their midfield depth is sort of shaping up a lot more than it was a couple years ago as well. So drink water. I mean, apparently Drinkwater has looked good in preseason, and they brought back Fulham guy apparently has looked really good.
Is Barkley back?
Oh, Loftus-Cheek.
Loftus-Cheek. Barkley.
Playing at Villa, no?
I thought that was a loan.
I think
he's back at Chelsea.
Back from loan. Yep.
I mean, incoming to Dubai soon? Question mark. Well, I'm looking over my shoulder at Forest. It says Newcastle could be the landing spot for Ross Barkley. Holy heck, what a career.
Is it?
Willock's starting every week for Arsenal this year. Maybe not every week, but Willock's gonna do his thing for Arsenal. But
for that spot.
Not when they named the club after him.
Dude, I saw the craziest stat about Joe Willock that was like, in his time at Newcastle, he had 13 shots on target and converted 8 of them.
Yeah. No, he scored in 7 straight games, and he started like 2 of those.
Yeah.
I think, and also like Billy Gilmore showed a ton of maturity in class, and you know the couple opportunities he had in Euros this summer. So I think Chelsea and they mix and match so well too. So I think that that midfield. Oh wait, yeah, they loaned Billy. Yeah, just kidding.
But they still have Mateo.
I'm gonna push back.
Yeah,
I don't think their depth is as good as you might think.
Go on.
I'm looking at their roster right now. Obviously, Kovacic, Jorginho, and Conte are studs. But, like, besides that, I'm looking Danny Drinkwater, Ross Barkley.
Yeah, but you can slot Kai into that 10 as well. You have Kai and Mount playing 10s.
Yeah.
Come on.
Also, like, I mean, it's just so weird with their formation.
Old. I don't know if I call them. Mount's a midfielder. I'd count. It's that's what I'm.
Kai's a midfielder.
Well, see, you know, like their formation's so strange because, like, the other day they played Cho and Christian simultaneously at wing back, like opposite of each other. Which, like, I'm not saying that they're gonna do that every match this year, but like then when they are in a defensive shape, those guys can sort of operate as midfielders in transition. And like, so if you consider Calum Hudson-Odoi a midfielder, I don't know, that's a lot like of depth that I guess you could consider. But I mean, also sometimes they have like 2 midfielders on the pitch. So
Yeah.
either way, Chelsea.
Forest.
I definitely see both arguments, but I'm probably taking City today. However, I would not be surprised by January, if not next year, that Chelsea would be pretty comfortably ahead. So gun to my head, City today, just mainly because of KDB's star power and the strength around him. But Chelsea's upside is they're only going to get better and better and better since they're so young and so talented, and they've already shown so much. So I'll take the lukewarm route on this take and leave it at City, but get back to me next year.
Okay, well, next week's sure to be a banger with Frontline, but also want to give a quick shout to Villa, like for real, and a quick shout to West Ham as well. West Ham was kind of turning like good teams over in the midfield last year.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, if they have Souček, Rice, if they had Jesse Lingard this year, like they're close. Unfortunately, he's trying to fight for a spot at United. Not happy about that, but we move.
And meatballs in the mix somewhere there for Villa, and that always gives you a claim to have one of the best midfields in the world. Well, we don't have too much left on this pod. I think really quickly, just want to let everyone know out there that even though the matches happen at like 1 a.m, the Olympics are going on. And the men's had their semifinals yesterday, day before. Brazil beat Mexico on penalties. Another heartbreaking loss for El Tri in a span of like 36 hours. Spain beat host Japan in extra time. Spain and Brazil will play on Saturday. Should be a really awesome match. Both teams have a ton of like quote unquote under 23 talent, but also like Dani Alves is playing in like the Olympics, so a lot of like really fun personnel matchups. And then in like the actually consistently fantastic tournament, the women's semis took place. The U.S. women's national team had their sort of shock loss to Canada, first time losing to Canada since 2001, which, I mean, honestly, I feel like, Canada has had a really strong women's side for a long time. So I feel like teams are kind of due after 20 years of losing to like your rival from across the border. I know a lot's been made of sort of the U.S. women's national team performance, the squad that was picked, the lineups, the management, etc. But shout out to Canada, huge accomplishment for them. That was Jesse Fleming on a penalty in the second half to give them a 1-0 win. And then Sweden took care of Australia. Sweden and Canada will play for the gold on Thursday. And that is going to be our prediction for the week. We're going to really quickly take our scores for this final happening on Thursday. And Loic, since I can't even say correctly predicted the Gold Cup final, since you were closest to maybe picking the US in the Gold Cup final, you get to have the first pick on this one. Sweden, Australia, Thursday.
Sweden, Canada.
Or gold medal match. I mean, sorry, Sweden and Canada, Thursday, gold medal match, Olympics, Tokyo, Loic.
Okay. I mean, sorry that like I won this week because I'm just kind of like a genius, but
you literally picked hold on. Not a single one of us on the podcast picked the US to win the Gold Cup final. Loic was just closest because he picked Mexico to win on penalties, whereas the rest of us picked Mexico to win in normal time,
or Canada,
or Paul picked Canada to win the Gold Cup final. So just when Loic's talking,
haters gonna hate. Haters gonna
all
hate.
Right, just tell us who's winning this gold medal.
I'm calling this. I'm gonna say like a like a 3-2 Canada. Yeah.
Down.
Yeah, because I think they got this momentum, and I want to see some golazos.
Down.
Who's next?
All right.
Yeah, Nico.
I'm picking Sweden 2-1. I like this Swedish team. They seem to have been the most dominant team all tournament. So I'm rolling with the Swedes.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Sweden in pens 1-1 after extra time. I think Christine Sinclair gets hers, but ultimately she does not convert her penalty, but Jessie Fleming does convert her penalty.
Holy
But
take.
Sweden still wins.
Okay.
I'm gonna go Canada 2-1. They've just, I'm just riding the CONCACAF wave in this one. If they can make it out of CONCACAF, the Olympics should be no issue. So 2-1 Canada in regular time.
For sure.
I picked Canada to win the Gold Cup. I was wrong, but I will not falsely predict Canada to lose the Olympics. They're going to win the gold medal.
Redemption.
Jessie Fleming screamer 1-0. Canada never loses twice. Everyone knows that. If you've ever talked to a Canadian, that's always the first thing they'll tell you. Canada's going to win.
Besides, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, besides El Neni.
They say, oh, sorry. Oh, Nenny. Well, Loic, since you
I'm just a
didn't
genius.
correctly predict anything, just tell us about your stupid 6v6 league, and we'll get on.
You don't
with
even
this.
know where this is going. Okay.
I actually don't. I'm actually looking at it right now.
So
God damn it.
our listeners, I don't know how many of our listeners know this, but this last few weeks I've been playing in this fantastic 6v6 league here in Seattle, bustling with some absolute pings. The league has many dedicated footy fanatics, one of which is a teammate of mine who mid-game yesterday asked me if I was an Arsenal supporter. I enthusiastically said yes, to which he responded, "Please don't tell me you actually like Giroud." Let's just say we were playing a man down from that point on. So this week's meaty bite goes to Olivier. Consistently, Giroud has been an absolute bargain for every club he's played for. You'd think that despite being 34, France's second all-time leading goal scorer would cost a little more than €1 million to go to AC Milan. The top trainer is allowing for players to have longer, more sustainable careers. This move is by no means a signal toward the end of Giroud's career. I'm thrilled to see what he can do in Milan and hopefully take them deep into the Champions League tournament. Oui. And I think that's the second time I've done a meaty bite about Olivier Giroud, but I think the fanaticism needs to really be showcased. So
I think it's like the second time in like 3 weeks. This is officially the meat Girouds.
Yep. the Giroud pies.
The Giroud pies. Fuck, I messed that up so bad. Oh, dang. That was a choke and a half.
Ariel in front of goal.
The Giroud pies. Damn. Well, thanks for that meaty bite, Loic. The final meaty bite of this episode of the Meat Pies podcast. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Meat Pies podcast, or watching if you're one of our new YouTube subscribers. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe or follow wherever you're listening or watching us. Feel free to leave us a review if you're on Apple Podcasts. Just make sure it's a good one, or else I'll send a member of the American Outlaws from outside Allegiant Stadium to bash your head in. You can find the Meat Pies podcast just about anywhere you get your podcasts. New episodes just like this one are being released every Tuesday evening, so make sure to stay on the lookout. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at Meat Pies Pod. Enjoy the rest of your week and up the pies.
Smash that like button, baby.
Smash that like button. Up the Giroud pies.
Up the Giroud pies.